music world, R&B legend D'Angelo has passed.
Oh, sugar, when you're close to me, you love me right now.
So before you get into the business, you really don't know what it's about until you get into it. You know, once you rub heads with snakes and, you know, you get jaded.
D'Angelo knew his time was running out months before anyone else, and what he did with that knowledge shocked everyone who thought they truly knew him. His deathbed confessions exposed a truth that completely changes everything we believed about his mysterious disappearance. D'Angelo passed away on October 14, 2025, but the man who took his final breath in that Manhattan apartment had been preparing for death far longer than the 15 months since his pancreatic cancer diagnosis. Those closest to him later realized that his strange behavior in that final year was filled with hidden clues, signs that he'd been carrying this secret all along.
Whose real name is Michael Eugene Archer, passed away due to complications from pancreatic cancer, which now appears he was quietly battling.
You never want to be at a place where you feel like you've arrived. It's always an upward incline.
He disappeared when the world wanted him most. At the height of his fame, millions were watching, waiting, and then D'Angelo was just gone. No farewell tour, no scandalous breakup, just silence. A man once hailed as the future of soul music vanished like a ghost.
There's a lot of people just copying the same format. Back in the day, it was more about being original. Originality was the thing.
For over a decade, nobody knew what really happened. Not his label, not his fans, not even some of his closest friends. One of the greatest musical minds of his generation simply walked away from everything. The fame, the money, the spotlight, and almost his own life. But here's what most people never understood. D'Angelo's disappearance wasn't a downfall. It was a slow unraveling of a man who could no longer separate his music from his pain. Behind the scenes was a story darker and more human than anyone imagined. Addiction, guilt, perfectionism, and the crushing weight of being idolized for all the wrong reasons. He wasn't just fighting the industry. He was fighting himself. And when he finally returned, he wasn't the same man who left. He came back wiser, softer, scarred but reborn.
Basically didn't know how to handle or to accept everything that happened. So, and then too, just seeing everything. Because before you get into the business, you really don't know what it's about until you...
This is the story of D'Angelo, the genius who disappeared to save his soul, and in doing so, became eternal. Michael Eugene Archer was born on February 11, 1974, in Richmond, Virginia, a city with a complicated history where the echoes of the past collided with the rhythms of black culture. From the very beginning, music was inseparable from his life. His father, a Pentecostal preacher, filled the household with gospel hymns and fervent spiritual calls. His mother brought the secular heartbeat of R&B and soul, teaching young Michael that music could move hearts in ways words could not. He once said in an interview, "Music was always prayer for me. Even before I knew I could play, I knew it could speak for me."
Doing something different. It was funny because when I first dropped Voodoo, a lot of people didn't like it initially because it was different than Brown Sugar.
Teenage Michael found inspiration in the emerging hip-hop scene. He explored drum machines, sampling and layering beats, creating a tension between mechanical precision and human feel, a tension that would later define his revolutionary sound. In high school, he formed his first band, performing at talent shows and local clubs. Audiences were mesmerized by his stage presence, magnetic yet reserved, commanding attention while retreating into the music itself. Fellow band members later said he didn't just perform, he disappeared into the song like it was alive. But this devotion to music came with tension. Michael's fascination with secular sound clashed with his father's expectations. The pull between spirituality and worldly success became a silent war inside him, shaping the emotional complexity of his future work. By the time he was ready to leave Richmond for New York City, he was already writing songs that fused gospel's harmonic depth with the sensuality and rhythm of contemporary R&B. Tracks explored desire, faith, and identity, themes that were daring, even troubling, to the church community that had nurtured him. When he arrived in New York, he brought with him not just the technical skills of a prodigy, but a vision for music that demanded authenticity and emotional truth. Record executives would later remark that the demo tape he sent them had something raw, something we hadn't heard before. It wasn't just music, it was a soul speaking.
You know what I'm saying? This is like a folk album, man. The natural progression from soul, the next step to soul was funk. Early Sly, a lot of early James Brown, a lot of early Funkadelic, Parliament. You know what I'm saying? A lot of early progression when the music was just starting to change.
And so Michael Eugene Archer became D'Angelo, a name that fused reverence for the divine with artistic ambition, ready to step into a world that would challenge everything he knew about fame, creativity, and himself. From the moment D'Angelo entered New York, it was clear he was different. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing truth in sound. His debut album, Brown Sugar, released in 1995, became more than a record, it was a declaration. The album's title track intertwined sexual desire with musical passion so seamlessly that it blurred the line between love and art. As one critic later wrote, D'Angelo didn't just sing about love, he made you feel it in your body.
Nothing even matters. Nothing even matters at all.
D'Angelo insisted on playing most instruments himself, layering each track meticulously. He spent nearly 2 years in the studio perfecting the album, alienating producers and engineers who couldn't match his exacting vision. He once explained, "If it doesn't feel like life, I don't want to record it. Everything has to breathe." That breath, that authenticity is what made Brown Sugar resonate so deeply. It sold 3 million copies worldwide and inspired a generation. Artists like Erykah Badu, Maxwell, and Lauryn Hill credited it with showing them how to honor their musical roots while daring to innovate. But success came with pressure. Television appearances revealed a man uncomfortable in the spotlight, brilliant on stage, but reserved in interviews. He struggled with the media's fixation on his appearance as much as his music, noting how his light complexion and long hair were endlessly dissected. "I wanted the music to speak," he said in one interview. "Not me." The follow-up, Voodoo 2000, was a 5-year labor of obsession and experimentation. D'Angelo assembled a neo-soul supergroup, including Questlove, Pino Palladino, and Mike Campbell. Their goal was simple: capture the spontaneous magic of classic soul. But the process was grueling. Sessions stretched for 12 to 15 hours, with D'Angelo overdubbing vocals repeatedly to capture the perfect emotional nuance. Musicians recalled, working with him was like chasing lightning. You never knew when the moment would strike, but when it did, it was pure genius. The album's rhythms were revolutionary. D'Angelo and Questlove pioneered drunk drumming, subtly shifting beats to create a human, living pulse rather than a mechanical precision. Lyrically, Voodoo explored sexuality, spirituality, and temptation with complexity rarely seen in R&B. Songs like Devil's Pie examined artistic obsession, while Playa confronted the costs of romantic entanglements. The recording was intense, personal, and unlike anything the industry had heard. Then came Untitled, How Does It Feel?, the song and the video that would change everything. The video's provocative imagery made D'Angelo an overnight sex symbol, but it also highlighted the disconnect between public perception and his artistic intent. Critics debated whether he was objectifying himself or being objectified, while fans responded with fervent admiration. D'Angelo himself said, "I'm just singing what I feel. That's all." Despite critical acclaim, Grammy wins, and commercial success, the attention took a toll. Concerts became arenas of expectation rather than connection. The man who sought to speak through music found himself trapped by the very fame he had earned. Interviews, photo shoots, and public appearances felt like obligations rather than expressions of art. By the early 2000s, the pressures of perfection, public scrutiny, and personal demons had begun to weigh heavily. Studio sessions were abandoned, projects delayed, and D'Angelo's personal and artistic life became increasingly difficult to manage. What had started as a meteoric rise now carried the seeds of a mysterious disappearance, one that would leave fans, collaborators, and the music world questioning what truly happened behind the scenes. After the release of Voodoo, D'Angelo's trajectory didn't follow the path most expected. The industry celebrated him, but he felt increasingly trapped by the spotlight. Friends and collaborators recall a man quietly unraveling under the weight of expectation. One longtime producer said, "Michael was brilliant, but he carried a weight nobody could see. Every note, every beat, it had to be perfect. Nothing less would do, and that perfectionism started to consume him." Studio sessions became unpredictable. Days that were supposed to be spent recording ended with empty rooms and unanswered calls. Musicians remembered waiting for hours, only to be told later he couldn't make it today. He'll call. Weeks turned into months, and the pressure on record executives grew intense. Virgin Records, which had invested millions in D'Angelo's career, described the period as chaotic and heartbreaking, a time when the man they believed would redefine R&B seemed to be slipping away. The weight of fame wasn't the only challenge. Physical transformations began to draw attention. Friends described him as obsessively controlling his diet and exercise to maintain an impossible standard. A collaborator from this period recalled, "He looked like he was punishing himself. It was as if the music alone wasn't enough, and the world's eyes made him question every part of himself." Concerts sometimes ended in disaster. In 2001, D'Angelo appeared on stage at a European festival visibly intoxicated, struggling to remember lyrics to songs he had written. Loss compounded his isolation. In 2006, Jay Dilla, a close friend and collaborator who understood D'Angelo's musical mind, passed away. That loss, colleagues say, was devastating. Jay got him in ways no one else could, a musician recalled. When Jay was gone, a part of Michael went with him. He didn't just lose a friend, he lost a musical mirror. By 2005, D'Angelo had become effectively blacklisted by much of the industry. It wasn't an orchestrated move, it was the result of frustration, missed sessions, and strained relationships. Those who had once celebrated his genius were left questioning whether he could ever return. Yet even in this withdrawal, D'Angelo wasn't silent. Friends report he retreated into private musical exploration, experimenting in ways that would eventually redefine his sound. The vanishing wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Addiction, perfectionism, and grief collided to create a period of profound isolation. Collaborators say he spent long hours alone, writing, recording, and meditating, wrestling with the pressures of fame and the demons of his own expectations. He wasn't hiding from the world, a friend explained. He was hiding from what the world had made him believe he had to be. For nearly 14 years, D'Angelo disappeared from public life. Fans speculated. Media outlets circulated rumors. Yet behind closed doors, he was quietly preparing, healing, and learning to reconcile the man the world saw with the artist he wanted to be. What seemed like absence was, in truth, a crucible, a period that would shape the next phase of his career and his life, preparing him for a return that would be both surprising and profoundly transformative. The years following Voodoo became a period of unraveling. Success had placed D'Angelo under a microscope, and the pressure to maintain an image he never asked for pushed him toward destructive habits. Friends recall a man whose brilliance was overshadowed by compulsive behaviors. One collaborator said he was chasing perfection and couldn't see how far he was falling at the same time. By 2001, incidents at live performances raised alarms. At a European festival, D'Angelo appeared on stage visibly intoxicated, struggling to remember lyrics to songs he had written. The audience watched a performer unravel in real time. Obsessive dieting and relentless exercise compounded his difficulties, leaving him gaunt and physically diminished. It was like watching an artist become a ghost of himself, said a session musician who worked with him during that period. Loss deepened his isolation. The death of Jay Dilla in 2006, a close friend and musical confidant, removed one of the few people who could navigate his creative process with him. The combination of grief, addiction, and industry pressure created a perfect storm. Studio sessions were booked and abandoned, record executives grew desperate, and musicians became wary of committing time and resources. By 2005, D'Angelo was effectively blacklisted, not through malice, but because repeated failures had eroded trust and patience. The vanishing act that followed was both deliberate and desperate. Retreating to his Virginia home, D'Angelo disconnected from the industry, canceling tours and interviews, leaving fans and collaborators bewildered. The man who had once been a rising star now existed in shadows, his absence creating a mystique that would last for over a decade. Addiction, unresolved grief, and the crushing weight of fame had combined to nearly destroy the artist, but the seeds of recovery had already been quietly planted. D'Angelo's return to the public eye began quietly in 2012 at the Bonnaroo Music Festival. Audiences remember it as tentative, yet powerful. One fan described it as like seeing someone you love come back from a long, dark journey, older, wiser, but still magical. Behind the applause, D'Angelo had spent years wrestling with addictions and the anxiety that fame had magnified. Multiple rehabilitation attempts and therapy sessions had addressed not just substances, but the emotional burdens that had haunted him since Voodoo. When he returned, he wasn't the same artist who had vanished. There was a calm precision in his performance, a confidence forged through struggle. Band members from this era recall sessions that were less about perfectionism and more about authenticity. He played like he was telling his own story, not trying to impress anyone, said Questlove, drummer and longtime collaborator. This period marked a subtle but profound shift. D'Angelo was learning to blend music with personal growth, finding a balance that had eluded him for over a decade. The creation of Black Messiah became a 5-year journey of renewal. Working with his band, The Vanguard, D'Angelo embraced a collaborative approach that married his regained discipline with the wisdom born from years of reflection. Each song became a vessel for emotional truth and social commentary. Tracks like Really Love fused sensuality with honesty, exploring relationships and personal evolution. Meanwhile, The Charade and 1000 Deaths confronted systemic injustice and police violence, reflecting a matured awareness of the world beyond himself. Recording followed the organic techniques he pioneered with Voodoo. Instead of rigid schedules or overproduced perfection, sessions were alive with spontaneity. Subtle imperfections in rhythm, carefully cultivated, gave the album a human heartbeat. A music critic noted, Black Messiah doesn't just sound like music, it feels like life. Messy, beautiful, and unflinchingly honest. By its surprise release in 2014, the album had already rewritten expectations, both for fans and the industry. The decade following Black Messiah granted D'Angelo a level of peace and control he had never known. Financial stability allowed him to make artistic decisions rooted in personal fulfillment, not commercial pressure. His health became a priority, replacing obsessive routines with sustainable practices that supported creativity and performance. Younger artists sought his guidance, while peers from the neo-soul era reconnected not as rivals, but as collaborators and friends. Yet even in these years of calm, D'Angelo faced private battles. Subtle health issues began to emerge, fatigue, digestive struggles, which he quietly monitored. The man who had once been defined by perfectionism and fame had found a sustainable balance between creativity, happiness, and well-being. His final months revealed a private fight with pancreatic cancer, which he faced away from the public eye, using the time to heal relationships, express gratitude, and immerse himself in the music that had defined his life. His passing on October 14, 2025, marked the end of an era, but his legacy is more than albums or awards. It is the story of a man who faced the highest peaks and darkest valleys, emerging with honesty, grace, and an enduring voice that will continue to resonate. The decade following Black Messiah granted D'Angelo a level of peace and control he had never known. Financial stability allowed him to make artistic decisions rooted in personal fulfillment, not commercial pressure. His health became a priority, replacing obsessive routines with sustainable practices that supported creativity and performance. Younger artists sought his guidance, while peers from a neo-soul era reconnected not as rivals, but as collaborators and friends. Yet even in these years of calm, D'Angelo faced private battles. Subtle health issues began to emerge, fatigue, digestive struggles, which he quietly monitored. The man who had once been defined by perfectionism and fame had found a sustainable balance between creativity, happiness, and well-being. Friends describe him as serene, reflective, and fully engaged with both music and life. D'Angelo's final months, however, brought a revelation. He was battling pancreatic cancer. True to his lifelong preference for privacy, he confronted it away from the public eye, using the time to heal relationships, express gratitude, and immerse himself in the music that had defined his life. His passing on October 14, 2025, marked the end of an era, but his legacy is more than albums or awards. It is the story of a man who faced the highest peaks and darkest valleys, emerging with honesty, grace, and an enduring voice that will continue to resonate. D'Angelo's story is more than a tale of talent and tragedy. It is a chronicle of resilience, transformation, and quiet triumph. From the dizzying heights of early fame to the isolating depths of addiction, grief, and self-imposed exile, he experienced it all. Yet, despite the chaos and the vanishing acts, he never lost sight of the music that had defined him. The long road back, from fragile reappearances to the creation of Black Messiah, showed a man who had learned to reconcile ambition with personal well-being. His ability to transform pain into artistry, struggle into wisdom, and silence into profound expression made his final works not just albums, but testaments to human endurance. Even in his private battles, D'Angelo faced life with honesty, introspection, and a commitment to authenticity. His passing on October 14, 2025, was met with grief, but also admiration for a life that, despite its shadows, shone with artistry, integrity, and emotional truth. The resurrection of D'Angelo is not measured solely by albums, awards, or public accolades. It is measured by the courage to survive, to create, and to leave a legacy that transcends music. He remains a reminder that brilliance can be both fragile and enduring, and that the human spirit, when nurtured with honesty and care, can rise again even from its darkest chapters.